Good afternoon. My name is Nick Morrison, and my thesis is why martial arts must be included in the American school curriculum to achieve a safer and more peaceful society. The father of modern karate, Gichin Funakoshi, once said, "The secret principle of martial arts is not vanquishing the attacker, but resolving to avoid an encounter before its occurrence." Martial arts teach how to avoid conflict and how to properly deal with conflict when it arises, a skill desperately needed in modern society. A similar ideal, promoted through the United States' Coast Guard's motto, Semper Paratus, which means always ready, is the simple principle of always being prepared for future conflict. As a society and as an individual, preserving peace and avoiding conflict is the supreme ideal. But when conflict arises, handling conflict properly requires decisiveness and courage. Unfortunately, mental and physical health are becoming increasingly pressing problems, as well as American society being oftentimes violent. The end result is innocence under attack with no chance at defense. A better reality is possible by equipping the citizens of this country with the ability to defend themselves. Safety and confidence would increase, while bullying and senseless violence would decrease. Martial arts must be incorporated as a staple of American physical education because it has proven to be an effective preventative measure to help end modern issues, and its benefits are so numerous that it can no longer be ignored. On August 22, 2025, on the Lynx Blue Line light rail in Charlotte, North Carolina, brutal and senseless bloodshed took place. DeCarlos Brown, a passenger on the subway, stood up and viciously stabbed another passenger to death. The victim of this crime was Irina Zarudska, a young Ukrainian woman. The crime was sudden and savage, yet it only proves that evil people exist and will commit unwarranted atrocities. One point of contention about this crime was the bystanders' lack of intervention during and after the crime. It had seemed as though the four bystanders who were in close proximity to Zarudska had just watched a woman violently and senselessly lose her life while they remained helpless, frozen in fear. Countless people were outraged by this inaction and seeming disregard for the human life being taken so near to them. Yet, why is it expected of citizens with no training to be so courageous to risk their own lives doing something they do not know how to properly do? If only those bystanders had prior training so as to be equipped for an event such as this. If only just one of those people had been taught to be comfortable in the face of danger. If only our society bred courageous warriors and not bystanders petrified by fear. A young woman would be alive today rather than be brutally killed for no reason at all. Modern society is in a state of global crisis as heart disease, diabetes, and obesity rates grow, as well as crime and violence being ever present in society. Head of school for the Institution of Education, Carol Fuller, with the help of martial arts instructor Vicki Lloyd, explains how martial arts can be used to prevent these problems in their book, Martial Arts and Well-Being, Connecting Communities and Promoting Health. On May 6, 2025, a 13-year-old California girl was attacked by a crazed man while walking home from school. The girl had attended jiu-jitsu classes at the Carmel Youth Center in California for the last 3 years. Now was the time for this 13-year-old to use her jiu-jitsu training to defend herself from her attacker. She blocked an attack from her assailant and subsequently brought him to the ground. There she punched him, put him in a headlock, and kneed him multiple times. She then ran home. Had this girl not had training prior to this event, the story might have been much more horrific. Unfortunately, her attacker remains at large. If children are the future, then why is American society not making sure that children are able to protect themselves? Martial arts programs improve cognitive function and mental health, which is why they must be included in the American school curriculum to combat the various mental health issues it is facing. Martial arts are defined by Cambridge Online Dictionary as a traditional Japanese, Chinese, or Korean form of fighting or defending yourself as a practice of sport or exercise. Yet, this definition fails to properly encompass all of the depth and complexity that can be applied to the term martial. Martial arts are distinct and varied, and each have their own culture, history, and use in modern day life. What proof has been shown of martial arts truly being the remedy to many of today's problems? A study conducted on PubMed Central to determine if a martial arts program was viable for intervention for at-risk youth showed that martial arts leads to an improvement in managing multiple sources of information and cognitive flexibility, using a control group and a martial arts group. The martial arts group also exhibited a significantly higher increase in the speed of processing complex information. An additional study by PubMed, studying the efficacy of martial arts as a tool for enhancing attention and executive function, stated, for instance, one study examined the effects of Taekwondo on the signs and symptoms of ADHD in children and discovered appreciable improvements. These studies can be trusted because PubMed is a database of the U.S. government's National Institute of Health. Information in papers or journals that are indexed in PubMed needs to be rigorously screened and vetted prior to inclusion. If attention spans and mental health are consistently decreasing, especially in recent decades, then preventative measures must be taken to stop these issues. Issues like these are one of modern day society's most pressing problems, and martial arts has been shown to help people who struggle with these problems. This must be taken into account and incorporated into society. In addition to improving cognitive function, martial arts irrefutably increases physical health. In the research paper, A Review of the Benefits and Risks Associated with Martial Arts, it is stated, martial arts provide undeniable improvements to physical fitness, muscle tone, flexibility, self-esteem, and self-awareness. The study came to this conclusion by compiling and analyzing multiple prior research papers on the same topic. Through consistent exercise and flexibility training, martial arts consistently makes a positive impact on the health of the practitioner. While it could be argued that many different forms of sports or exercise share similar benefits to martial arts when it comes to cognitive function and physical health, martial arts separates themselves in that they have been shown to positively affect the general happiness and well-being of its participants, as well as providing a practical life skill. For clarity, mental well-being is not the same as positive mental function as referred to earlier in this paper. As stated by Fuller and Lloyd, mental well-being refers to the subjective aspects of self-confidence, positive self-esteem, engagement with the world, an ability to cope with the stresses of everyday life, and an ability to live and work productively. In their research, Fuller and Lloyd sent out a survey to inquire how martial arts affected their participants' mental well-being. Through their survey, they found that 97% responded feeling that life was more worthwhile, 75% felt less anxious, and 84% felt happier with life. These responses cannot be ignored. What is it about martial arts that affected the lives of these people so much? Much of these improvements can be attributed to many key aspects of martial arts, with one of these aspects being the focus and discipline required in martial arts training. For example, when sparring with an opponent, one must focus only on their opponent and the problem that their opponent is presenting them. It becomes a problem of necessity. This intense focus forced upon the practitioner becomes almost therapeutic for many. When entered into this state of focus, the stresses of everyday life become almost non-existent because there is only one thing to worry about, and that is to defend oneself. The fact that martial arts has been shown to positively affect mental health and well-being only makes it more relevant to modern day issues. Martial arts teach principles and philosophies that in general are not included in the American school curriculum. Nobuo Yagai, a lifelong practitioner of martial arts, wrote a book titled Warrior in the Garden. Nobuo's book's title is based on the old Chinese proverb, "It is better to be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war." He chose this quote to be in the forefront of his book because it perfectly encapsulates the peace through strength mindset that he builds on throughout his book. In his book, he states, "Without the correct mindset, martial arts are just a weapon. With the correct mindset, they are a strong set of tools, especially for the young. Why the young? Because they're the future, and kids have minds like sponges." If the goal is to foster a healthy society, then incorporating principles and values in the youth is vital. Martial arts can be a strong tool to help achieve this goal. Honor, humility, discipline, and respect are just some of the principles taught and learned through martial arts training. Men and women are called to be able to protect themselves for their own distinct reasons. As a man, and especially a father, one must be capable of violence in order to protect themselves and those who they love. Convicted child molester Jack Reynolds was interviewed on how he would choose his victims. When asked if there were certain characteristics he looked for in children before molesting them, Reynolds stated, "In children, yes, but more, I also looked at their families. If I thought the father was a threat, I would not approach the child." Fathers need to be capable of violence in order to protect their families and those who they love. Modern philosopher Jordan Peterson shows the same ideal. Peterson states, "A harmless man is not a good man. A good man is a very, very dangerous man who has that under voluntary control. Good men should be capable of violence." He argues that you cannot be good and weak at the same time. He says that it takes strength to be good, because it is difficult to be good. Women should also be equipped to protect themselves, but for different reasons. A sad reality in today's world is that women are more likely to be kidnapped and are the leading victims in domestic violence cases. According to Emory University School of Medicine, 85% of intimate partner violence victims are women, and a woman is beaten every 9 seconds. The Office of Justice Programs found that exceedingly more women are kidnapped than males, 72% and 28% respectively. Women are constantly being victimized in modern society. Imagine how much better it would feel to know that the women you love are able to protect themselves. Imagine how much better the women themselves would feel. Imagine a society where everyone could protect themselves. It is important to note that this thesis is not merely theoretical, as an entire nation already incorporates martial arts into its national school curriculum. Since 2012, the Japanese Ministry of Education has formally included Budo, which means the martial way, into its national physical education guidelines. This means that schools must offer martial arts as a part of their physical education program for all first and second year junior high students. Japan's purpose of including martial arts transcends just combat skills. It is tied to traditional culture, discipline, respect, physical health, and character development. Japan understands the value of martial arts, and it is evident in their society. Throughout this paper, it is repeated that if martial arts were to be included in the school curriculum, then the society will achieve greater safety and peace. Does Japan reflect this proposition? Since Japan's incorporation of martial arts in 2012, Japan has continued its trend of declining crime rates. Compared to the United States, Japan has extremely lower crime and violence rates, where the United States assault rate is roughly 248 per 100,000 people annually. Japan's assault rate is 28 per 100,000 people annually. Japan is also widely regarded as one of the safest high-income countries in the world. Japanese society is consistent with and even exemplifies this thesis's purpose on a nationwide scale. The implementation of martial arts in Japan proves that this thesis is not merely theoretical, but is profitable and essential, providing a solution that America desperately needs. Opponents to the incorporation of martial arts have concerns regarding potential side effects of this discipline. Aggression and antisocial behaviors have been attributed to martial arts practitioners because of the misconception that only violent people are drawn to martial arts. Many claim that martial arts contain positive benefits on one's mental health. Yet, a study by doctoral student in developmental psychology at the University of Alabama, Brooke Meyer, titled, "Martial Arts May Not Provide Mental Health Benefits to Kids," seemed to show contrary findings. In her article, she states, "The researchers did not observe any association between participation in martial arts and teachers' reports of children's behavior." Here, Meyer is arguing that there is no real correlation between martial arts and positive behavior or well-being. These findings are not trustworthy and are also outdated. The study that Meyer was using was from 1998 from the Early Childhood Longitudinal Study. Studies referenced earlier in this paper, such as Fuller and Lloyd's book and the research article titled "Martial Arts as a Tool for Enhancing Attention and Executive Function," showed results opposite to that of the one Meyer was using, and were also more recent studies. The original study that Meyer was using is also not completely trustworthy, because in the article, the authors themselves say that martial arts as taught by one practitioner may be totally different as that taught by another. Thus, it is possible that the close to zero effects that we report here are an average of positive and negative effects. This shows that the original study should have been conducted in a more controlled setting like the ones conducted by Fuller and Lloyd. By observing more recent and properly conducted studies, one can conclude that martial arts, when taught well, truly does positively impact the mental health and well-being of its participants. Critics of the implementation of martial arts would argue that the American school system does not have the funds to realistically support this idea on a nationwide scale. Many would argue that if the current American school system already struggles to pay its teachers, then how would they even begin to find the money to implement a martial arts program? Moreover, finding and paying a certified instructor would be challenging enough and expensive. This brings up a good point, but one must first understand how public schools pay their teachers. Schools do not just have one big clump of money that they pull from to pay for their various expenses. Schools have money that is used only for certain programs. Certain federal and state-funded grants can only be used to fund teachers and classroom needs. In the same way, schools have budgets for their physical education programs. While they have a limited budget, and many schools rely on grants or partnerships to pay for these types of programs, implementing a martial arts program is completely possible and budget-friendly. Truthfully, a martial arts program would be much more cost-effective than most would think. No new construction would be necessary to offer a space to train martial arts, and the school gymnasium would be a perfect place to practice, and most mats are moderately priced and would be a one-time purchase. The school itself might not even have to pay for the program. Many schools use nonprofit organizations to pay for their physical education programs. In the same way, schools could use the help of nonprofit martial arts organizations to fund a martial arts program for free or at a low cost. Certain schools today already do this with martial arts organizations like Rocky Silva's American Karate, Kickstart Kids, and Active Star Athletics. Furthermore, when compared to other school sports like football or baseball that require equipment, a field, and frequent maintenance, a martial arts program would be cheaper and easier to implement. This is because the base requirements for a martial arts program is open space, mats, and an instructor. Modern society is suffering from many problems, such as physical and mental health issues and constant violence. While it is true that because of the fallen state of the world that these problems can never completely go away, something must be done so as to prevent future generations from struggling with them as modern society does. Preventative measures must be taken to stop this downward spiral and to strengthen future generations. In an optimal society, schooling should consist of education and physical health training that includes self-defense training. In Plato's Republic, Plato shows the same point, arguing that the ideal citizen should be a student warrior, one that is educated in the arts, literature, and intellectual pursuit, while also trained in physical and military training. This is what modern society must adopt so as to combat the many problems it is facing in the modern age. as the Greek historian and general Thucydides is often attributed as saying, "The society that separates its scholars from its warriors will have its thinking done by cowards and its fighting done by fools." Thank you. I would now like to take questions from the judges.
There's a line from your paper that I really love, and I don't even know how to form a question out of it yet, but I want you to talk more about it. You said, good men are capable of violence. And that reminded me of the line in Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe where they're talking about Aslan. And he says, Aslan's good. And they say, is he safe? And they're like, no, of course he's not safe.
Yeah.
He's not a tame lion. But this idea of good but dangerous men, do you think our overall, I'm not talking about PCA specifically or any one school, but do you think our overall educational system is producing harmless men?
I would say not necessarily harmless, but it's not equipping people. People aren't aware, like, in just in the everyday life of a lot of people. I would say the school isn't equipping people with the ability to be aware of the dangers that are around them. People,
Okay.
Yeah, that's how I would answer that
makes
question.
sense.
So Mr. Mooney stole one of my questions, so, but
why I
that's
went
okay, I
quickly.
took one of his, that's right. So a couple of things. First, in your research, did you come across any age groups that it would be good to begin this type of training? When in the schools should this be? I mean, should we have our kindergarten kids doing this, or is it better suited for middle school, or what age group do you think?
Personally, I think the way Japan does it with middle school is a good age because that's when they're starting to become more mature, and obviously by then they understand the difference between right and wrong. But on a nationwide scale, I wouldn't do it at a young age, but like personally, I started when I was 4 years old doing martial arts, and it taught me things like I wasn't fighting anybody back then, but they were teaching me like what to do if somebody kidnaps me and yell, "This is not my dad, this is not my dad." Like there's good things that I think everyone should be taught, that it just isn't widespread unless you take them to a martial arts gym. But I would say middle school is a good age.
This is a really fascinating topic. I think in the gladiator games that I am wanting to introduce, everyone should be on the lookout for you. They need to run if you're coming, Nick. Good job.
Thank you.
Nick, I think you did a great job. Obviously, I'm a basketball coach, and you mentioned in your paper that other sports could have positive mental and physical effects on whoever's practicing that sport, right? You also stated that martial arts is set apart from those other sports because it teaches a practical life skill. What would you say to a basketball coach, a baseball coach, any other coach that would say, hey, I think my sport also teaches practical life skills?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yes, you can learn practical life skills from ball sports like discipline, teamwork, resilience, all those. But to clarify, what I was saying in my paper is that the skill of self-defense by itself is the practical life skill. Like obviously basketball or baseball isn't a skill that you need in everyday life, but I would argue that being able to protect yourself is just as valuable as like other practical life skills like swimming, So.
Where do you train?
I currently train at Boju Jiu-Jitsu.
Okay, so at Bossier Jiu-Jitsu, if someone walks, so you're a man of good faith. You're there because you want to be a good man who can defend himself and others. But what if someone of bad faith walks in and like they really are just violently minded? They really want to hurt. They want to learn the skills to hurt people in the worst way. So Cobra Kai from my childhood, Karate Kid. How does a good training program like your own weed that out?
That's a great question. So I would say that, like I said in my paper, martial arts is proven to help people who struggle with aggression and stuff like that. Like in I would say it's better to have these aggressive and violent people in martial arts because at least they have an outlet in martial arts, and eventually they learn how to control themselves and a lot of principles and philosophies, like I said in my paper as well. And yeah, I would say that it just, and like they will also just, violent people will learn humility through it too, you know, like, because obviously in a martial arts gym, they're not going to know nearly as much as the people in there. So it would be very healthy for them, I would say.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question for you, Nick. In your paper, you talk about Daniel Penny.
Mm-hmm.
So he did have training. I don't think it was martial arts, but he did have self-defense training, or did he have martial arts?
He was a Marine.
He was a Marine. Okay, so
Yeah.
he had self-defense training. So he used his training to help people on. It was a subway,
Mm-hmm.
but then there was kind of some
Controversy.
There was some
Yeah.
controversy about it. What did your research show you, and how do you make sense of that in a case where he was punished for a time?
Yeah, so that is a tough situation, but the only thing that I think Daniel Penny went wrong is the guy that he attacked, the guy that he was stopping from harassing other people, eventually died. And that even him dying is debatable of whether or not that's Daniel Penny's fault.
Right.
Because the guy had multiple drugs in his system at the time when he died. So there was a lot of other factors contributing to that. But I would say Daniel Penny taking action was a good thing, because imagine if Daniel Penny was on the same subway as Irina Zarutska when that happened.
Yeah.
And she probably would still be alive, you know. So I hate that the guy died, but because it made the situation look worse. But I think Daniel Penny's intentions were right.
Right. And like you said, there were other factors that were going
Contributed
on.
to his death,
But
yeah.
you know, we've talked about all this. We get information so quickly that when the information was first being released to the news, we were only being told, you know, somebody died. It took several weeks, maybe months, for us to find out there was a lot more going on in that situation.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people. It seemed like maybe a lot of decisions were being made in the public without having all of the information, without having all the facts.
Yep. Yeah. I agree.
Nick, I think a good thesis presentation is persuasive. And it's funny how I'm looking at my notes here, and at the beginning I was writing down some questions that were like, well, this is ridiculous. We can't do this in a school. Like, it'll be really difficult to implement. Like, thinking logistically, and, you know, why can't we just encourage parents to put their kids in martial arts? Then by the end, especially when you talked about how, hey, this has been shown in Japan and other places, this is actually beneficial. I was like, oh, okay, that's really good. Like, you were winning me over.
Yeah.
So I guess my question is, are you aware of any school district, any individual schools in the U.S. that have implemented something like this?
Yeah. While I can't name the school specifically, like I said, multiple schools already use nonprofit martial arts organizations to offer a space for kids to train at school, and you know, they have martial arts instructors at the school to teach
Or
the
as
kids.
a part of their curriculum, or just I think
it's extracurricular.
Extracurricular. Okay.
Yeah.
But you don't know of anyone who's actually doing it as part of their school curriculum?
No,
Okay.
not in the U.S.
And then I guess more of a personal question. I mean, you've kind of alluded to this some. How has martial arts benefited you personally?
Yeah, so for me, I draw a lot of confidence from martial arts training. Like, I feel more secure in myself, and it's just like, because it opened my eyes a lot too, you know, just like all the dangers in present society, but just working through it every day, or like the trainings, it just gives me confidence knowing that I can defend myself properly, and that I've been taught how to do that. And yes, I think the main thing is I draw confidence from it. That's how it's affected me.
Okay.
So yeah.
Can I send Mr. Dradi up and have you show us something?
Maybe at Bosher Jiu-Jitsu.
Maybe we can just have Nick come back and he can teach a class
That's right.
here.
There you go. Want to arm wrestle?
All right. If there are no further questions, I'm done. Thank y'all.